Hello, my name is MC, and I work with Transparency Toolkit. And these are some of the people watching us. And there's been a lot of great work with people looking at what intelligence contractors do and about the function of specific surveillance programs and about what intelligence agencies do and the interactions between them. But no one has really looked at this at much of an individual level. However, I think it's important to look at the surveillance state from an individual level because institutions are made up of people. And when we can understand what people do within institutions, why they do it, what their worldview is, how they got to that point, we can get a better understanding of how they function, how we can reform them. And luckily, it's very easy to find out who is involved in the surveillance state with just a few simple Google searches. Because people need jobs. And when you need a job, you need to post about what you can do. And in the intelligence community, the necessary skills are things like intercepting communications and using secret surveillance databases and analytics tools. So people post things like, I know how to use X-keyscore on LinkedIn, along with I know how to use Microsoft Word and all these other things. So I'd like to introduce you to a few of the specific people who are watching us today. This is Garrett DiPietro. He lives in Denver in this house. And he's a pretty normal guy. He has a wife and kids, family. He joined the Navy back in 1993. You can see on one side, that's him when he joined the Navy, and on the other side, that's him in his last year in the Navy. He worked in the Navy for 20 years, just long enough to get a government pension doing intelligence work, and then he moved into the private industry, where he started working for Lockheed Martin. It's a pretty standard career path. Private industry pays better. So we can see from his skills, start to get an idea of what he does. His skills include pretty standard signals intelligence things like Anchory and Analyst Notebook and intelligence analysis and electronic warfare. And it also includes secret programs like Dishfire, right along mundane things like Microsoft Word. So from these, we can get some idea of his workflow. Chances are that on a daily basis, based on whatever the current intelligence priorities were, he would be selecting targets and inputting them into a tasking database, something like Octave, or later its successor, UTT. And he would be using that to justify why a target was foreign and gain approval for targeting. Once he did that, the main database he had access to was Dishfire. Dishfire is a program that collects around 194 text messages per day. But the most interesting thing about these is not the text messages themselves, it's the metadata. With the metadata, he could use it to figure out where people were and do something called contact chaining, or just figuring out who they know. So Garrett's a pretty normal guy who just happens to be able to read people's text messages and track them down and find out everyone that they know. So now, Tyra De Appel. She also joined the Navy back in 1997, or actually, before that. She's also a pretty normal person. She has a family, and she has a dog who likes to wake her up in the morning and interrupt her naps, according to her Facebook. And she joined the Navy in 1997, worked there for about 4 years, and then she moved to the private sector. She had a variety of jobs in the private sector, including some involving security research and penetration testing. But right now, she works for an intelligence contractor called Aegis Advocacy Services. Primarily, she works on reviewing resumes of people, maybe even some of the same resumes that I have here, but she also had a stint as a network analyst as part of this position. You can see at the bottom that she has some of the skills and things that she knew that she was doing as a network analyst. These are pretty standard set of tools for a SIGINT analyst: X-keyscore, Pinwheel, Marina. So basically, she was looking at internet traffic and metadata. But she had a particular specialty that is fairly interesting, and she describes this on her profile. training junior analysts in their respective disciplines and in the use of current biometric tools and data to specifically include facial recognition software and facial recognition techniques. That is Tundra Freeze, which you might recognize from this article. So she was training people to go and intercept traffic and then use facial recognition software to detect, figure out who people were. And last person. This guy is particularly interesting. Solomon Varnado. He also has a long career in the intelligence agency, although he doesn't work in the intelligence community anymore. He lives in Indiana, and he started working in military intelligence in 1989. He had a lot of roles there. Won't go through all of them, but here's one pretty standard example with a long list of databases and collection tools. You can see stuff like Wealthy Cluster, Pinwhale, XKeyscore, similar with intercepting internet traffic and analyzing it. And there are some that we also don't recognize in this list, like Pursuit Central, which there's a lot of interesting new code words in the data that I've collected. And some of them we can infer some meaning from the names and from the code words that are mentioned in the same job listing. But in some cases, you can go even further. Like in Solomon's next position, he mentioned that he identified, collected, and performed direction finding of specific target signals using pen and trace, display view, and segs. And so this looks like it's something around geolocational data, and he mentioned something about airborne SIGINT platforms, so potentially something with SIGINT drones, but a lot of these code words I haven't found anywhere else. Pen and trace is something I've only seen in job listings and resumes. But luckily, there are other resumes that provide guidance as to what that is exactly. So this says that this is someone else's resume on an entirely different website, and they provide a very helpful description of what pen and trace is. Use remote access to operate airborne collection platform pen and trace. That sounds like some sort of SIGINT drone to me. So the last, there's something else interesting about this particular job description that Solomon has, and that's at the end, he says that he lobbied for independent review of collection management processes and redefined mission scope and daily duties. And I find that very interesting, combined with the fact that he only stayed in this position for 2 months after staying in the other ones for over a year. So after working at L3, he moves on to Pluribus International. Again, it seems like a pretty similar role to his L3 one. This one was definitely dealing with processing SIGINT data from drones. AirHandler is a program for processing data from drones. And in this one, he also stays there only for 2 months. And the very interesting thing about this is that after he does this, after he leaves Pluribus, he goes and leaves the intelligence community entirely after working there for 22 years. And instead, he goes and he works at a used car dealership as a used car salesman. So it's possible that he got frustrated with some of the processes. It's hard to know, but from what I can tell from his profile, that's what it looks like. And it's also a good reminder that not necessarily everyone on this list is like a bad person who is doing horrible things. Some people are probably trying to change the system from within, and we don't necessarily know it. So there's lots of data out there, just openly available on individuals, and we're not the only ones who use open source intelligence. The NSA uses it more. OSINT is one of the main intelligence disciplines, along with SIGINT, collecting intelligence from signals, and HUMINT, collecting intelligence from human sources. And I was going to make a slide with all of the information available that you could use to understand, learn about individuals online, but I realized that the NSA had already made it for me, so I didn't need to make that. The NSA even has guides for its analysts on collecting data online. This is one of them. It's really quite amazing what you can find on the NSA web server. And it's a little bit out of date. It suggests using ICQ people search as a wonderful way to find people, and I'm not really sure who uses ICQ still, so that's not sure how helpful that would be, maybe for historical data. But open source intelligence is something that the intelligence community already does, and increasingly so, because terror has gone social. And this is marketing material from a company called ZeroFox that helps the intelligence community track ISIS via social media. So a lot of people working on this, and luckily for us, secrets have also gone social. And I think that open source intelligence is one of our biggest assets in understanding secret surveillance programs, because it's something that can't be shut down, and it's something that can be collected in a very decentralized fashion. So we have the potential to actually build a surveillance state that's a decentralized check on the surveillance state based on this open data. It's possible that some data sources will disappear, but I think like security vulnerabilities, there will always be more open data sources that we can use to learn about surveillance. And some people already use this open data to understand the surveillance state. And there's been a lot of great work with this, but most of it has been on a smaller scale. And it can't compare to things like what the NSA can do. The NSA already has tools. They need to collect it all and to go through and examine all that data. And we need similar tools to be able to collect open source intelligence and to analyze it. But up until now, there hasn't been anything really great at scale. But now we have some, or at least the start of some. This is a search with about 27,000 LinkedIn profiles of people in the intelligence community that Transparency Toolkit made. I noticed the back end, Brennan Novak did the front end, and Kevin Gallagher keeps our servers up. And I'd like to show you some demos of this, if I can get the browser working and over here. So, let me see. Where'd the cursor go? Ah, it's on the wrong screen. Ah, there it goes. Yeah, so this is this search software. And it's possible to search through, say, you want to see anyone who uses open source intelligence. This could be tricky on a, yeah. Using soft selectors like that. And you can search, take a second, both all the fields, which is what this does, or you can also use hard selectors like name, or search the job title or description, or filter by date. It works pretty well, it takes a few seconds. Yeah, so these are all the people who mention open source intelligence in their profiles. And it's also possible to filter by different things, like the company they work at, or where they live. So say you want to see everyone who works for Lockheed Martin on open source intelligence. Can see that there, and it's possible to scroll down the list of profiles. You can see the listing with their job title and descriptions and what they do. And then if you click on the pages, you can see profile and all of that. People's work history, so like you can see their original LinkedIn. And then if you click on any of these assets, you can also see the other areas, the other people who mention OSINT in their skills, or the other people who work for Lockheed Martin, or any of the other things that apply for the data set. It's taking a while. Still a bit slow and buggy, so please be patient when you use it. So here's all the people who list OSINT specifically in their skills section. Okay, so back to presentation for now, maybe. Is this cool? Now, let's see. Whoops. Let's Control L. Not open. Oh, okay. Yeah. What? Did it just disappear? Oh, this is a blank slide. Okay. This is a little bit big. That's fine. So we collected this data from LinkedIn using terms like known code words, intelligence agencies, departments, intelligence contractors, and industry terms, things like SIGINT, OSINT, TSSCI, TOPI. And you're able to just collect from certain places. There are some limitations with this data. Most of the data we have is focused on the US, Partially this is due to our search terms. Partially this is due to the US intelligence community just being very large. Some of it is also because Americans have bad OPSEC. But I think they have good OPSEC, and a lot of people list operational security as one of their skills in their profiles. There are also some other the other limitation is that we couldn't get people's connections. You can't even get connections on LinkedIn with a recruiter account. But there's a nice list on the side of people also viewed, which is frequently people who are working in a similar industry or who are doing, or who know the person. So we use that as an approximation for people who are probably connected to the person, and we also collect all that information. So you can go out 3 hops on the people also viewed list and see people that they probably know. Then there's another bit of a switch back. There are also some more experimental ways we've been trying to visualize this data, and these are more at the prototype side of things. But so this is a network graph showing which companies help with which surveillance programs. You can see in the middle, the blue dots are companies and military, and around the edges, the red dots are surveillance programs. So you can get some sense. The ones in the center are the ones who tend to help with multiple surveillance programs, whereas the ones on the edges are either false positives or ones that just help with a couple. So you can also just click and see the resumes of that. Then we also have a experimental graph. This isn't quite loading right on the server, but you can see the geographic distribution of the people working on surveillance programs. Okay. So this is not good. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it's also possible to look at the broader trends of the intelligence industry from this data. This is a graph of people who mention working in signals intelligence over time. So you can see it goes up and up and up, and then in 2013 it drops, and in 2014 it keeps dropping, and then in 2015 it starts going back up again. It's hard to say for sure, but this could be the Snowden effect, and it might have dropped due to that. Yeah, so this was counted by going through different people's profiles and seeing in which job listings they mentioned SIGINT or signals intelligence or terms like that, or signals analysis, and plotting that on a graph. Similarly, we have a graph of people who are working for or with the NSA, which starts dropping in 2010 and then starts going up again in 2015. It's also possible to use these for specific surveillance programs. So Pinwhale, you can see it spikes in 2006. You can use it to approximate when people start working on programs, when programs start, when they're succeeded by other programs, hiring trends, things like that. However, the sample size on this one is fairly small, and that's because we can only use the job description fields. The other fields aren't correlated with the time when people were working on it. So if we were to look at the whole profile, we could see when people entered the workforce, but not necessarily when they started working on these programs. And similarly, this is a graph of SIGINT database users, which is just going up over time. And there are some other possibilities for interesting analysis that could be done that I haven't quite got to yet. You could do percent breakdowns of the people who work on different surveillance programs by company or by location or by skill set. It's possible to figure out which surveillance programs are related based on which code words co-occur in the same job listings. And it's even possible to automatically detect new code words based on taking a list of known code words and a list of known acronyms and then looking for all the words in all caps past a certain length that don't match those particular lists. So this is some of the people working on tailored access operations. And one thing I want to be clear about is that this isn't a hit list. This isn't necessarily a list of just bad people. First of all, there is some noise in this data. There are people who accidentally got mixed up in it. PRISM is a very bad term for this. It's something a lot of people use as an acronym, and we were able to filter some of that down by using additional terms like SIGINT for commonly occurring words, but it's not perfect. More frequently, we'll find people who maybe work at a contractor doing something unrelated, or who know a lot of people in the intelligence community but are on the periphery. So not everyone is working on secret surveillance programs, but a significant majority of the people in the database are. That said, even for people who are working on these things, I don't think they're all necessarily horrible people that we should demonize. My goal with this is to provide a face to the surveillance state and a better mechanism for researching and understanding these programs and accountability. So we're planning to keep gathering this data, and I'm hoping that it can be used to start debates about using details of secret surveillance programs that weren't previously known, that people can use it to question why certain companies are suddenly hiring for something that sounds really sketchy, or to be used as a starting point for FOIA requests or other requests for information, or even just to start conversations with some of the people who are involved in these programs. So if you're interested in this, it's difficult to build a surveillance state, especially a decentralized one alone. So if we could use your help, and if you're interested in doing something like this and applying tactics like this, let us know and we can probably help. Thanks.
Thank you very much, MC, for this wonderful presentation. And I'm sure there are tons of questions. As you know, we are running a little over. So I'll allow 3 questions, and the rest of you will have to discuss things with MC probably in the front of this room. OK, so hands up. Where are questions? None. Everyone is completely flattened by this presentation. OK, well, I can understand that. OK, here we go.
So you said it's not a hit list because there's some noise in the data. And I wonder if it's possible that we can make an augmented reality application where you can do facial recognition on people when you meet them, and then source the data. So you could take a picture of a person you think is an intelligence agent, and then it'll say, oh yes, and here's the data, and here's their specializations. Maybe we could use some open data for something like that, like a pig finder app of some kind?
Yeah, so there are some ways to filter out the noise, and some of those will overfilter, which is some of why I haven't done that here. But if you're particularly worried about it, you could use something. You could filter down the data for something like that, definitely, yeah. And since I have all these pictures, all the pictures and data are on GitHub, by the way, so if anyone wants to do this, you can just download it from GitHub. All free software, all open source.
OK, talking about open source intelligence, right?
It's about 14,000 pictures total, I think, and 27,000 profiles.
First of all, hello, and thank you for the very inspiring and interesting talk. I really enjoyed it. I was wondering, did you get any feedback from the person you tracked there, or did you receive any hate mails or something like shut the system down or anything?
Not yet, but this is sort of my first time presenting it, so it's possible I will, but not as of yet.
Any other reactions from the security community, MC? I mean, is there anything else that did anyone approach you? It doesn't have to be hate mail.
I've gotten some feedback from people on it, but not really. No one really just approached me randomly about this, no.
And did anyone follow up on the story about the guy who works as a used car salesman now?
This was the first time I talked about it, so.
Okay. So journalists in the United States, where was it? Indiana? Or?
Yeah, I think I have his phone number too, so.
OK.
If anyone's interested.
Probably we can start a crowdsourced research here. OK, last question. Anyone? OK. Jake again. OK.
One thing you might want to consider doing, first of all, I think this is the best talk at this conference, and you are doing really great work, and I hope that someone who's really into startups funds you, because all the other startups are garbage compared to this. But Have you thought, so there's a constitutional crisis happening in Germany right now about selectors. Have you thought about maybe helping the German government with some of the selectors for counterintelligence? Like maybe produce selectors from all of these people and automate the creation of X-keyscore fingerprints of all the selectors of all the people, including facial recognition, telephone numbers, addresses, names, family members, and just build it so you have a full X-keyscore fingerprint for everybody in the American intelligence community. They could just load that into the BND systems, and they'd be ready to go, and the chancellery doesn't even have to help.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I wasn't thinking of using that for selectors, though that is one of the next steps I was thinking of.
Okay, so the birth of a new project here at Republica. Thank you very much, MC McGrath.